Omo auction for the whole of the week.
Okay.
In terms of fixed income, things have been pretty apathetic on the bond side, pretty flat, not too much trades going on the in the bond space.
Okay.
We're anticipating that probably after the MPC meeting next week, there might be a little bit more activity. In terms of treasury bills, most of the activity was centered around the auctions. That's the NTB auction for last week, and then the UMA auction. We saw that consistent to what has happened after the elections. Marginal rates for both auctions have been on the downward trend.
Okay.
So, like for the NTB auction, the marginal rates closed at 10.75, 12.5, and 12.85 for the 91, 182, and the 364-day maturities. While for the OMO stop rates, they closed at 11.84 and 13.2 for the June and September maturities.
Okay.
So you see that now it's becoming difficult to even get 13% in the at the various treasury bill auctions.
Right.
So I think most PFAs now are switching to fixed deposits, because I think rates there are still around 14.5, and PFAs are not taxed. So the yields there are a little bit more
higher for them.
yeah, they're a little more decent. So you might see other rates trending lower, because the treasury bill rates usually is a benchmark for
everything
for
else.
almost every other kind of rate.
Interesting. And as we like to remind people, you still, if you're better off, if you want to take advantage of these rates, you're better off going to your bank, Abby, to buy from their position.
Yes, exactly.
Because you still need 50 million naira if you want to buy directly from the federal government. Okay, but anything else that touches it? Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So as always, we try to answer all our questions on the show. Any questions that we can't answer, we address them the following day. Kufre sent this in yesterday when we were talking about the 2019 budget. We're talking about OPEC. We're talking about oil prices dipping. We're talking about Nigeria's revenue being lower than it is. And I remember our guest from ARM, Shegun, was saying that their projection is that Nigeria's deficits, right, the difference between what they're spending and what they're bringing in, is, he said they're about 2 trillion or 2.1, and I think the last I saw was supposed to be 1.8. So they were projecting a higher deficit. And then we now said that, well, look, another issue that Nigeria is facing is that, well, okay, how do we close the deficit? That was the question. How do we close it? So in order for you to close the deficit, you have to borrow more money. And we're already saying that our debt service to revenue ratio is at 60%. Yeah, so about 60 naira of every 100 naira that Nigeria brings in revenue, 60 naira of that goes towards servicing debt. So Kufre now sent in this question yesterday, and Kufre asked, what happens when debt service to revenue hits 100%? What do you want to answer that? What's that scenario? What does that mean?
Heaven forbid. You asked me yesterday, I said that, but what it means is that means every single naira that we make in the country is used to service our debt, meaning that there's no naira to facilitate infrastructure,
right?
No naira for the budget, no naira for education, no naira for anything else but servicing debt. So,
right.
So that is a situation we never want to be in, So, but the truth is that we've already seen that we might not be able to do anything about the debt.
Mm-hmm.
So, in order to make that ratio, to work on that ratio, make it more appropriate, or more to lower the 60%, what we then need to do is work on the revenue, which we can control. So there are different things we can do to increase revenue.
Mm-hmm.
One thing is, from the writer of the story that we covered, is to diversify our economy. Right now we are majorly dependent on oil. So where there are oil price shocks,
we're in trouble.
Where there's a problem, where there's a disruption in production of oil, we're in trouble. So we need to focus on diversifying the economy from oil, for one. There's also the angle of being more efficient with our tax.
Yes, that's correct.
The truth is that I believe the government has already taken bold strides in being more efficient with tax.
Okay.
There are rumors that they were trying to increase VAT, although I hope they don't do that, because that will affect me, But being more deliberate with the informal sector, that is a way of increasing tax. So I don't believe they should tax the formal sector more, because you're already taxing them from source, especially if you're a salary earner, you're taxed from source. But for things like luxury goods, you can increase the tax for those things.
Right.
For the informal sector, however, I don't know how you want to reach them, but if you can get more people to pay tax in the informal sector, it will increase the revenue of the government. I think they're actually doing a pretty good job now. I think I don't know if it was Business Express or Fresh Press that covered the story about FIRS writing to banks saying that they should freeze accounts for some
Right.
corporates.
We both covered it. Yeah, we both covered it. Yeah.
So now you can't even open a corporate account without having a TIN or VAT number.
Mm.
So you can imagine that if they're being that efficient now, imagine what will happen in a few years' time. They'll probably be able to reach almost everybody in terms of tax.
Right.
I think they're doing more in terms of exploiting our minerals as well. I think last year in November or December, we launched the first gold refinery in Nigeria.
Right.
And I think this particular refinery is having a lot of support from the CBN. I think there's information that CBN might open a gold exchange. They might even keep some of our foreign reserves in gold.
In gold, right?
So these are some of the things that I think the government is already doing to try and diversify the economy. But the thing is that it takes time. Where Lagos is now didn't happen in 1 year. I mean, it took
a while.
over 16 years for us to get to where we are, and we're not even there yet.
Right.
So we anticipate that Nigeria will need time to get to where it needs to be. And what we need most of all is continuity. Even though governments change, we need to continue with our policies. Consistency is where we should be.
Okay. Right, we have a message talking about taxes. Nojim Noj Yusuf on Twitter is asking, did you say PFAs aren't taxed?
Okay, no.
Sorry, the funds they managed.
The funds they manage,
not subject to withholding tax.
All right, we have a number of comments here. We would ask. So Chidi is asking, what's the meaning of bond duration?
Yawa Chidi, they are throwing that's a CFA question. Okay, the question. I love our audience. I tell you.
Yes, honestly.
Okay.
Send us a tweet. I'll respond.
Yeah. It's also report. But okay. So bond duration refers to taking the weighted average of cash flows in order to determine how much how much time would it take in years for you to be repaid a bond's price, if I remember correctly. So that's talking about the duration of the bond. So whether you're buying, if you want to calculate how much you're going to get in years for a 20 or 30-year bond, you're going to take a weighted average of those of the cash flows of the bond to determine how much you get back. Or so because interest rates and the price of the bond diverge.
Let me just chip in.
Help me out, please.
so the bond that we currently have in Nigeria that has the best duration is the 2038 bond. Its duration is, I think, 6 to 7 years, meaning that if you were to invest all the coupons that you get from that bond, you would have gotten the money you invested back in 6 to 7 years.
That's if you reinvest the coupons you're paid, right?
Yes, you would have gotten the money back. So after the 6th or 7th year, you would then just be enjoying the interest. Your money that was originally invested would have come back to you.
So, and this is why we emphasize that even with treasury bills, when you get your upfront interest from the T-bill, reinvest it back into the security. Thank you, Bunmi. I'm glad
Thank you very much, Bunmi. The money buff.
Exactly.
Right. Yinka is asking, or has a comment here. Rotus, still on the budget blues. Was the 30,000 minimum accounted for in this budget? Because it's appearing like some group of people have been scammed. It seems as elections approach, the realistic part of our brains just press pause. And then he goes on further to say, I don't understand when you talk about paying tax and that. What do I get in return? Practically nothing. Two groups of people pay tax, the individual and the companies. The companies only pay for the sake of practicing in Nigeria, but the individual? Do we pay tax just to live in Nigeria? No. We pay to expect something in return and we get nothing in caps for it. I have been in darkness for a week and I got home last night to a bill of 14,000 naira from Ikeja Electric. And you expect me to circumvent the system?
You expect me not to circumvent,
right. If I have the opportunity.
Yinka is protesting. Yinka, thanks for your message. On the budget side, I don't think the 30K minimum, I have to check, but I don't think that has actually been priced into this particular budget. I don't think it is, but Yinka, I'll double check on that. But there are good points on the taxes. People need to see what they are. It's a chicken and egg situation, Avi.
Yeah,
although we have to pay. I don't know. Sadly, Yinka, I'm sorry. We have to pay higher taxes.
In Lagos State, where it works, for instance, at least to a very large extent,
you can see what they're doing.
Yes. So would you say that you can see what they're doing with the monies that are being paid as tax?
To a large
Well,
extent.
I'll say extent, not large. To an extent, we'll say that.
All right,
Yeah.
because these are the kind of questions we need to be asking and holding to account. Benga Komu here says, good morning. I saw a news report where doctors were applying to an agency to leave the country for saner climes. If doctors leave, who will treat us? Do we not need a healthy workforce? There's also the loss of revenue in form of taxes, again, to the government at different levels, within Nigeria. He said, is that possible? Then he goes on to ask, is that possible that we will all use all revenue to service debts? Our politicians will collect their allowances and salaries, no matter the state of our economy.
Right, Benga, that was just a hypothetical question from Kufre. They were asking what would happen if it was 100% debt to service rate. And as Bunmi has said, God forbid that happens.
God forbid it happens. All right.
Sean
says we can also cut our expenditure, stop paying these people in government so much money.
Right.
So Sean is responding to how we can also save. We have Ibrahim here says, apart from increasing revenue in the event of a 100% DSCR, we can drastically cut costs by first slashing the salaries of lawmakers, senators, and so on. Before that happens, I'll be in Canada.
Chai, Ibrahim, don't go, don't leave us, don't leave us.
Together.
And how much? Oh gosh, the time. All right, more messages. All right.
Olatuni Saidu from Apapa says, good morning, guys. Please, what's the difference between Omo auction and T-bills auction, and what's the current rate?
Okay.
Thanks.
They're the same. There's NTB, there's OMO. OMO is a tool that the CBN uses to mop liquidity. NTB happens every fortnight.
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks, and it's from the DMO.
Right. Yeah. So the NTB is an OMO. That's an example.
Most of them are auctions, but they're from different people. One is from CBN, the other one is
the DMO.
The DMO, and the monies are used differently. The monies from the NTB auction are used for budget support, while OMO is purely for liquidity management.
See why we have Bunmi on this show. Bunmi,
thank you so much, Bunmi, and thanks Rotus for giving it to us fresh and hot. And thanks to all those who sent in messages. We're really grateful. Again, we couldn't take all of them, but we'll try to answer the questions that have come in.
Yes, indeed.
This is still Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1. At 7:30, we bring you freshly pressed 981 with our analyst as we dig deep into today's headlines and analyze the news stories.
I have to keep reading. Hey, God, so I have to keep reading. Try. This guy was stony.
Honestly, it's
stony with one technical question. That was the last time you tried. I don't care.
You know when you said duration, I was like, oh, God,
can you imagine?
This is my worst day because I can't remember the definition.
Do we have a?
Thanks,
okay, thank you, Rotus.
I'm not trying to crack